A world without patriarchy. What would that look like? Welcome to Change the Conversation with the Hopefulist. My name is Wendy McClure, and it's time we had a conversation about living in a patriarchy and how that affects our lives. Together, we can make a difference and change the conversation. Hello and welcome. It took me 50 years to recognize patriarchy and how it influenced my life, which is why I now question everything. Now, they got to me by 10 years old, and I know this because I recently came across my 5th grade yearbook. And in it, there was a section of, what do you want to be when you grow up? And in 5th grade, at 10 years old, you know what I wrote? A nurse or a teacher. Well, those are awfully feminine jobs, aren't they? So already at 10 years old, they had boxed me into thinking that I should be either a nurse or a teacher, the jobs that society has dictated that women can do. That early, at 10 years old, I was already convinced that I could only do a female-oriented position. And this is such a great example of how early it starts. They want you to be conditioned early. This way, you never question anything. You just, this is the way things are. I probably would have never even questioned that had I not delved into patriarchy and the way it rules our society and women's lives. Not just women's lives, really, men's lives too, everyone's lives. So the reason that is so telling is because of how young they had gotten to me. And I really should go through what the boys had been saying. But I'm sure that it wasn't, father, husband, because boys are always encouraged and told that they can do anything that they want. And girls are told that as well, but with the caveat that when you get married and start a family, little girls hear that from the time they are little girls. They're also put into training when they're just infants by giving them doll babies to start training them on how to take care of babies, to let them know this is what they are going to do. They are going to be taking care of babies. So there is a huge difference between the way boys are raised and the way girls are raised. And even if it's just that one thing, when girls are told, well, when you grow up and get married and start a family, you may feel differently. Or, when you grow up and start a family, you might have to, step back from your career. Those things are never said to men. When men are told, well, when you get married and have a family, you're going to have to make sure that you provide for them. So it just gives them more incentive to be successful, while women are being de-incentivized to pursue something that we like because it's being shown as a waste of time. Well, you might really be into biochemical engineering now, but, you really probably shouldn't go to school for those 6 years because, once you get married and have a family, you're probably going to want to stay home and take care of the kids. I bet you nobody's ever said that to a boy. I bet you. So girls are conditioned to look for a husband, and it's so early. And we start to do everything for what we call the male gaze. And that means dressing how society deems we should be dressing to attract a man. Doing things that men would find appealing. Now, I even fell for this myself. I'm a little disappointed in myself, but patriarchy tricked me into loving football. And one of the reasons I liked football is because it made me a cool girl. I was a cool girl. I was one of the cool girls who watched football. Now, granted, I have come to love football. I love watching football. But I'm not really sure of my initial motivation. It might have just been to be considered a cool girl. And that's never a reason to get involved with anything. Now, granted, it worked out for me. I do love football. But how many things, were you encouraged to get involved with because it might be a good place to meet men? What kind of activities or places, we've been told to go hang out at the Home Depot if we want to meet a man. I know I had been. So that's why when we say decenter men, that's what we mean. We're not saying that you can't consider men, especially the men that you already have in your life. What we're saying is stop making all of your actions about pleasing men, about being attractive to men. And we are conditioned so early to always keep that in mind, that we don't even know that's what we're doing. Every time we go out and we're making sure that we have our makeup on and our hair done and, that we look great. And granted, it's nice when we look nice. It makes us feel good. We feel confident. But it's so much better when we just do it for ourselves rather than to try and get attention from anybody. I remember an uncle of mine had posted a picture on Facebook with a woman that had the, I think it's called the septum ring, where it was through her nose, through the middle part of her nose. And the meme said, we don't find this attractive. And I responded to him saying, maybe she's not trying to be attractive to you. She's just doing it because she likes it. And his response was, I'm entitled to my opinion. To which I responded, I never said you weren't. It kind of went right over his head. I wasn't yelling at him for having an opinion on it. I was just stating maybe it had nothing to do with him. Do you see what I mean? Men and women are so conditioned to center men in every conversation that the fact that a woman might wear a septum ring and not care if men find that attractive is just not even in the realm of possibility for some men. Because again, this is how society has trained all of us, that men are centered and we are to be their supporting characters. So that's what people mean if you hear the term decenter men. It means to have your own hobbies, to go out where you want to go out, to look the way that you want to look without thinking, I want to attract a man, without it having to depend on whether a man would find that palatable. We need to do things in a way that is just for us, that makes us happy. And one of the ways that we do this, the way to start changing the conversation around this is, instead of saying when you get married, start saying if. If you get married and have kids, this is what it looked like for me. But things are different now. Women are more centered in the conversation now, and what you desire actually matters now. Because what women desired didn't matter for so long. Our job was to get married and to have babies and to keep the population growing. And now that a lot of women aren't really making that their top priority, we're hearing things like, oh no, the population is dwindling and they're making it seem like it's our fault. Now, it is not my responsibility to keep the population growing. Does society as a whole need to keep the population growing? Yes, but it's not my sole responsibility. And if I choose not to have children, that is my choice. I don't owe this society anything. The only thing that I owe is myself. And that's to do what I want to do in order to make myself happy. And if that sounds selfish, say it about a man. If a man were to do the things solely to make himself happy, that is totally acceptable. But when women want to do something that is solely to make themselves happy, that is selfish. And that is another part of the conversation that we have to change. We are not selfish for stepping outside of the box. We are not selfish for not going along with what society expects from us. Because society never had women's happiness in mind. Women, their role has always been supporting men. And we have finally figured out we don't have to go along with that. That's not the way I want to live my life. I'm not going to be told what my job is and then be shamed if I decide that's not the route I want to go. Now, if that is the route that you want to go, that's the wonderful thing about America. It's choice. You have the freedom to do whatever you want to do. Just like the age-old, stay-at-home mom versus the working mom. We're at a point now where most women have to work. And if this Project 2025 gets into play, they are defining the nuclear family as a man and a woman with children, and the man is working while the woman stays home and takes care of the kids. Now, I don't know in what states in the country they plan on that being the case, because it's not the case for most couples today. Most couples cannot afford to have one parent stay home. So I don't even know realistically how that plan would work. But again, women finally are standing up and saying, no, that's not the route I want to take. And they're being shamed, and they're being called names, and they're being ostracized, and they're going through all of this stuff because they're standing up and speaking out. They're saying, that's what you expect of me, but that's not what I'm going to do. And as soon as you start to say that, they want to shut you up, because the more you do that, the more it shows other women that they can do it too. And then before you know it, oh my goodness, we have a real population crisis, which is where we are now, which is one of many reasons they are trying to enact abortion bans, because they need more specific white babies in this country. Because it's only a decade or two before the white population will become the minority. And there are a lot of people that are very afraid of that happening. And one way to avoid that is to force white women to have more babies. It's also mostly about control, but I've talked about that a number of times before. I won't get into all the details here, but I will say that, if you're not following me on TikTok, please go ahead. It's at the Hopefulist. And I do a lot of political content on TikTok. And just this morning, I was talking about how the Trump-Vance campaign is saying how they won't enact or sign in a national abortion ban. That is because they are not using the term ban. They found out very quickly that people in this country do not want abortion bans. So they're calling it something else, restrictive. They're calling the feelings about abortion a consensus rather than calling it how many people want a ban, a consensus on abortion. They're sneaky. Not that we can trust the thing that they say anyway. But that is something to keep in mind, that when they're talking about not signing a national abortion ban, they mean they're not going to sign something that has the word ban in it. Doesn't mean that they're not going to make some sort of rule or law about what women can and can't do with their bodies. And that's what leads me to, when I was talking about that this morning, a number of women came into my comments and said, there's so many more important things than abortion right now. Is there? Really? There's something more important than having control over your own body? Because I would like to inform you, if you don't already know, that if you don't have control over your own body, you are not free. If you don't have control over what direction your life goes in, you are not free. If you get pregnant when you're 18 and you, in any other situation, would have decided to get an abortion because you're not ready to start a family, you want to go to college, if you are denied that option, that is not freedom. And if you go to a hospital and you're hemorrhaging blood, you're having a miscarriage, and the hospital turns you away and says you're not close enough to death for us to treat you, then you are not free. And I don't know how much more clear the government can prove that they don't care if women die. All of the stories that we have seen of women being denied care when there was a baby that was non-viable involved. People are losing their fertility. They are losing organs. They are getting close to death. And I would love for just one time for a man to walk into a hospital and say, I'm having an attack of appendicitis. And for the doctor in the hospital to say, I'm sorry, we're going to have to wait for it to burst before we can help you. Because that's what they're doing to women. They're making them take on so much more than needs to be done. They're causing much suffering that is unnecessary. And if you don't find that to be appalling, then I don't know what's wrong with you. Because no human should be treated that way. Not one human should ever be treated like their life doesn't matter, like they don't deserve life-saving medical treatment. So I've gone off on a tangent, as I tend to do. So like I said, changing the conversation, one of the things is to just say, if you get married and have kids, instead of when. And you say this to boys and girls. You encourage girls just as heartily as you encourage boys to do what it is that they enjoy, that will be good for them, to pursue a career that they like, that will be supportive of their lifestyle. So moving forward, what I really hope that you will do, and I know a lot of you don't do this because, you consider it to be too hard. I want you to think about what you loved to do as a child, because that is where your most authentic interest really is. Think about what you loved to do as a child. Do you do anything remotely like that at all? Now, I don't even really remember, but my mom said I used to put on like little plays and stuff. And I found some old books that I had written as a child. Not like books, but like, a little, construction paper book. And I am interested in writing. And that's been, a portion of my job for most of my life. And it's something I'm thinking about getting more into. But I obviously really enjoyed that as a child. What is it that you really enjoyed as a child that you can do now in your adult life that will bring you a feeling of satisfaction, of fulfillment, of happiness, of joy? Think back, because that was what you really enjoyed before society got to you and was like, well, you can't do that. I mean, it's like with painting or drawing. Oh, well, you can't depend on that as a career. Like, you're going to have to do something else. So what was that something that you wanted to do, that you really loved to do, that you were told, oh, well, that's just unrealistic? Do more of that. Write about it in your journal, because I got to tell you, as much as people dislike journaling, it is so helpful to figure out things like this. You just start writing. First sentence: what did I love to do as a child? Or what do I love to do now that I can do more of? It's just a couple of things. And then you just start writing. And one thing leads to another, that leads to another, that leads to another. And the next thing you know, you're figuring stuff out. You're figuring stuff out. Because I want you to do what you truly love to do. And I want you to know that when you do what you love to do, you are not selfish. You are acting just like all of the men in this country have always been allowed to act. They're always allowed to pursue their interests. And even speaking of that, a lot of women's interests are called frivolous and made fun of. Going to get your nails done, getting your hair done, which I don't really love the process of going to get my hair done. I do love to get my nails done. Book club. That's made fun of. Oh, you guys are just getting together to drink. Okay, what are you doing when you watch football? You're watching football and you're drinking. And even my husband had, I really had to challenge this. So he's like, well, we all know that you guys just get together to drink. And I'm like, as you do when you get together at the bar to watch football. And he's like, well, we're really watching football. I'm like, and we're really talking about the book. We might not talk about the book the entire time, just like you're not only talking about the football game amongst your friends when you're watching it. I don't know why this is such a hard thing to grasp, that women's hobbies and interests are made fun of and men's are not. They're just not. So, with all of that said, I want you to figure out what you love to do. I want you to journal a little bit. It's going to be really good for you. I think you will enjoy it. And you can journal about anything, everything and anything. And it really helps you figure things out along the way. So, always remember, we are stronger together, especially when we question the status quo. And always remember that I'm here cheering you on. Thank you. Thank you for joining me in this conversation. Together, we are better. Please visit my website at hopefulist.com and remember to hit that subscribe or follow button.